So, welcome to Life Writing Live on, let's see, what is this, May 9th, 2025. My name is Stephen Barnes. I'm the creator of several different technologies that we discuss here, but mostly I'm a husband and father, writer, and martial artist. And we talk about how to escape suffering, embrace joy, be of service, how to have success in all three major areas of your lives while still paying attention to the three gates. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? And I'm going to kill the sound on YouTube so that that does not interfere. And let me just kind of turn this over because I don't know how much time we'll have with her to the lovely and talented Ms. Tananarive Do.
Hey everybody. So this is a live finish your book day cam. If you ever see me looking this way, I'm literally finishing my book. So Bear Creek Lodge is going to come in at just under 600 pages, just a smidge longer than the Reformatory. And I'm really excited by the response to the Reformatory, but as you can imagine, it's a lot of pressure to try to follow up a book that people say is so powerful and has impacted them so much, even though I've intentionally created, I mean, it's a creature novel. So even though I'm writing it straight, it's a Tubi, there's part of this novel that's a Tubi movie, and part of it is a look at old Hollywood. And I'm trying to write it as an elevated Tubi movie, but it's kind of tongue in cheek.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, that's the very definition of elevated genre.
Yeah.
To take something that could be done, as a Roger Corman film,
Yes.
and elevate it. There are a lot of classic movies that did that. Aliens is obviously an elevated Tubi movie, for
Right.
instance.
Yes. So I've never, I mean, I've written stories like it with alternating timelines. It's very similar to the alternating timeline in Joplin's Ghost. But I think for this book, it takes a lot longer for the reader to figure out what's the relationship between the historical chapters in old Hollywood and this huge creature in the mountains of Northern California.
I would actually like to do a deeper dive into your process on this,
Oh,
especially
okay.
since you're finishing today. But first, I'd like everybody to unmute themselves and
Oh,
say
yeah.
hi. Say hi to your friends.
He
Say hi to
knows
your
I can
family.
go
It's
on and on
Friday.
talking
Hey,
about that.
Hello to
hello.
Happy
everybody.
Friday.
Always glad to see you all.
Hello.
Hello,
You too, Linda.
everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah,
Hey, everybody.
great, great. Okay, now shut up and let me get back to the wife person. Unmute yourself, T, and let's unmute yourself. Great. So let me ask some questions. You said that you felt like you were under a lot of pressure,
Hmm.
and a lot of people have said that when they have a huge success, it puts pressure on them and makes it harder for them to access the part of themselves that created that success. That it actually is, instead of inspiring confidence, it feels like an obligation. Okay, so I would
Yeah.
like you to go into that because I think that some version of what you're talking about hits all of us every day.
Yes, and sort of a backstory. Some of you might know that many years ago, I worked with the Alex Haley estate on a novel called The Black Rose that was based on his research, which I later found out was actually mostly the research of Alelia Bundles, who was Madam C.J. Walker's great granddaughter. And in going through those boxes and files, unfortunately, I didn't find notes or outlines or anything that would have been helpful to me, or at least if I did, I didn't like the notes or the outline. I'm very stubborn in that sense. I have a very strong sense of how I would do something, as Steve knows, in collaborating with me. Although we're getting very good at that. But yeah, I've discounted advice from the ghost of Scott Joplin, the advice of my agent. But in any case, I came across the transcript of an interview between Alex Haley and his brother, where his brother was basically trying to prop him up, like you wrote Roots, you're the man. And that became significant later as I understood that Alex Haley, for all intents and purposes, never finished another book after Roots. And if you're saying, what about this book? What about that book? Ghostwriters is my guess. If not entirely ghostwritten, then substantially ghostwritten. I feel like based on my research and the huge garage, remember that garage, Steve? A huge garage full of boxes. He was planning to write so many other books, including the Men of C.J. Walker book. And I think the man was blocked after Roots was an international phenomenon. Some of you all, not many of you all, but some of you all may be too young to remember that 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 was the day where there were only three networks and everybody watched it. You understand me? I mean, it's hard to understand today that the whole country was shut down to watch a miniseries about slavery. That would never happen today, but that did happen to Alex Haley. And I think it blocked him. So even though a lot of that experience was negative, working with an estate was negative, I wouldn't do it again unless there was an extraordinary circumstance. That is not the person, that is a lawyer. Um, that lesson has really helped me stay on the path. That and what we teach here, because sure, I could have gotten in my head about it. Even now, I'm in my head about some of the things my agent said, that some changes he thought I should make with the contemporary storyline and adding a little bit more deviousness here, a little more unsettled things there. I mean, I guess I could maybe, but I'm writing it as it's expressing to me. I only made the changes that I agreed with, and in that case, it's he was agreeing with Steve that I needed to expand the old Hollywood chapters more. And right now, literally, I'm rereading a scene that takes place during the shooting of Gone with the Wind. And I'm trying to use the audience fascination with old Hollywood and Clark Gable and Hattie McDaniel and Gone with the Wind to match the tenor of the creature abduction that had just happened in the previous chapter. And that's the blending part. I like is the evacuation of Atlanta presented as if it's really happening enough to match the tenor of the scene just previously where this creature has done something bad. Let's just say. So, but the good thing is, as Steve keeps reminding me, that's what editing is for. So I have a lot of resources. I live with a huge resource, my husband, who's not only a resource in terms of my emotional journey, but really his DNA is woven all throughout this from the time it was the first short story, Incident at Bear Creek Lodge. Like he's very interested in old Hollywood too, has had a lot of suggestions that in fact we co-wrote the feature script that was the outline for this novel. So, he's deep in it with me, and that's a huge resource. But also the things that we teach, the sentence a day, you've always got time for that. And you can diagnose whether you have an emotional issue by whether or not you're able to accomplish that. That's been hugely powerful. But to be honest, I haven't even needed that so much with this one because I'm having a blast. And as I've
Yeah, I
said it
think that's an important thing. Remember, it took you 7 years to do the last one, and you were trying to do this one in basically 12 months.
almost,
And so, what was critical to a degree on the previous one, you were driven by pain, the urge to
yes,
express something from your family, and it ripped your guts out. So
it did.
this one, you're pulled by joy. I mean,
I
the old
really
Hollywood
am.
stuff has all of the social need, the social root that you must do in order to honor your
And
ancestors.
I'm still mad about it. I'm mad on her behalf. I'm heartbroken about what happened to her, so that's
But you
real.
understand that's also then a metaphor for what you and we are going through in Hollywood right now. You're
Absolutely.
re-examining those feelings in the light of things that are going on now. So there are multiple levels of reality. It's the doing, it's the what's being shown on the screen, it's how is what's being shown on the screen created, it's how do people feel about the act of creation, what does it mean in terms of the history of America, the history of Hollywood, and then wrapped around that, you have a family drama, which is in essence your Tubi movie.
It's my Tubi movie. And I'm not yes, and it's just so much fun. I got My barometer for the last chapters, especially the last chapter in a particular character's point of view, is have I expressed what their purpose was in the story, what their quest or what their goal was in the story? Can I tear up by something they said, right? Like I want to tear up at the end of every section by every, like I'm saying goodbye to that character. This is the end of your point of view. And I didn't tear up in first draft, but I could go the next day because I'm writing very fast. Like I've probably written 30 or 40 pages this week. So I write it the first draft and then I go back the next day and buff and polish. And I know them so well. The only reason I can do it this fast is because I know them so well at this point. I'm not asking my questions about why they're doing the things that they're doing. My only mission right now is to make sure every question has been answered. Every goal they have has been addressed. I'm not, nobody was just biding their time in the story. That everybody knows what this book was supposed to mean without trying not to state the themes specifically. I try to avoid that, but I might have slipped in
Look,
there a little bit. I'm getting emotional.
and so you should, sweetheart. You're living in that space right now.
Yeah.
This is what that means is that you're being honest. This is going to be an excellent book. It's going to be an excellent book because remember the strife that you already went is like going through a tough mud or going to the gym under a kick-ass drill instructor. If the next task doesn't feel like it's as much of a strain, remember you're much stronger now.
Yeah, that's
What you
true.
went through made you a better writer. Now, one of the things I wanted to say is that knowledge is not about memorizing facts. It's about being able to see the relationship between facts. In the same way, you have two different stories, one that takes place in one timeline, one that takes
Hmm.
place in another. If you were to extract those two and look at them separately, what you would see is the thing that you cannot see right now, but I could see. And that is that this is a master class. What you're doing is something that can only be done by someone who has totally mastered several other skills, so that the fun that you're having doing this is also backed by the pain of realizing that what the Hollywood things mean, what we're going through right now, what it means to our lives and our hopes and dreams. There's just as much pain that you could go in because you are honoring the pain of your ancestors. This is about your pain and our hopes and our dreams and what's coming up in 5 weeks, directing our first studio film. All of this stuff is in there. And the meaning of this story will be grasped by the readers who look at the two stories separately, and there's going to be scholarly articles on that. But you're going back and forth between the timelines, which means that some part of you had a sense, a feeling about the appropriateness of this image juxtaposed with that image. That can only be done if your skills are at unconscious competence. So this is just as much of a push for you as the previous one was, but hopefully it's a lesson. Have fun. Have
Yeah.
fun.
And I
Because
think
you're always going to go into the pain. Always. You can't not do that. But you
that's true. I can't
deserve at
help
this
that.
point in your life to have fun in your work. You've earned that right, sweetheart.
Well, I
Please.
appreciate that, sweetie. And one little sort of Twilight Zoney thing I want to add. I think I've mentioned this to you, Steve, but you may not remember that there are certain things that I get suspicious about, or superstitious about when I'm writing. In my novel, The Good House, for example, I wrote it out of our experience of living in the Pacific Northwest. I knew we were going to be moving to Los Angeles, but several of the chapters take place in Los Angeles, and I almost feel like every time I pass Griffith Park, I remember the time when I was writing about Griffith Park when I had never been there before. I feel like I project myself a little bit into my future sometimes, which is what makes me superstitious about some things I won't do. Like something that happened in the end of My Soul to Keep. I won't do that again because I'm superstitious about bringing that energy, into my life, right? Um, this one, my protagonist is a director. We were not directing when we wrote the spec script, Bear Creek Lodge. And when I mean, yeah, I did use a scene from when we went to a meeting at the Universal lot, but it's just so weird to me that I actually have turned into a director while I'm writing a story about a director, and it's kind of woo doo 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 doo. So
Well, if that's not magic, I mean, look, you're
mm,
hugely ambitious. But most of what it takes to accomplish things has to be at that unconscious competence level. You don't know who you are. You have a better idea of who you were, but in the moment, there's no knowledge of what we are. There's just the action or the being of it. When you write stories, when you take a look at Sinners was an incantation. It wasn't just
hmm
a movie. It was sacred art. It was sacred storytelling, and because
hmm
of that, it had fantastic power. I mean, it's really Star Wars for Black people, as far as I can see. I mean, it's
It's
hitting
the only
us that
experience that
hard.
compares in the theater is Star Wars for me. The first time I saw it in the theater with my dad.
So, what I'm kind of suggesting is that does that not give us a sense of the power of story? That when you come from your heart, you've developed the skills, you do the work, you care about your past and the future, you spend every day in that space. The magic formula is about having a map or mentor, okay, following your ancestors. What did they do? What was the courage they had? And then following the example of the best artists that you can subject yourself to. The action, doing the work every day. You've been doing this work. You have not avoided this
No,
because
I've embraced it. I mean, since November, honestly, but even before
that's right.
then, but definitely
That's
since
right.
November. And then the initial script that we did, that was during the writer's strike. So we were, like, well, we can't really do much right now except write a spec script. So that became a very, very strong outline. I would say 80% of that outline has survived the novel just with additional chapters, additional deep. I mean, the flashback scenes were not as expanded in the script because Hollywood hates a flashback, or at least that's the conventional wisdom. So I was able to really, I mean, luxuriate in getting to know the 20s and the film industry in the 20s. And I've loved writing this book. I have absolutely loved it. And I just hope that my editor doesn't hate it, just like all of you. That's like literally my thoughts. I hope my editor doesn't hate it.
You know, in 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we're going to be directing that first film. Neither of us had ever said to each other, let's direct a movie.
We sure
But
hadn't.
but clearly we've been able to embrace it as a valid doorway. It's just another form of storytelling. And
Hmm
that's what we are. We're storytellers. And we're also trying to build certain things for our family. We talked about the fact that when we did Danger Word, why didn't we follow up a year later? Why didn't we do another one? And then another
Yeah.
one, and then another one. That for some reason we were waiting for people to come to us. Whereas the power is in creating a path that with joy, meaning of life, escape suffering, embrace joy, be of service. With joy is taking you closer to that goal all by itself. You figure, what are the resources we have? Do you wonder? I mean, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable about this, but if you'd been able to write the reformatory in a year, that if it might not be 100% what it is right now, but to the degree that the path is more important than the individual products, you might have been a better writer by now. That on the other hand, you couldn't have been because you had to go through these things. I mean,
I think
it's not a guilt triggering exercise here. That's not
I
my
think
intent.
we just both also need to remember that that was the period when we were breaking into Hollywood in a more significant way. Post George Floyd, everybody wanted to meet with Black people, align themselves with Black people. We ended up with some very unusual meetings, and we got our Twilight Zone script. We did, I mean, a lot happened during that time, but I could have written a book in more like 3 years if not for the emotional part. Now, the advantage, though, I think there was one advantage of how long it took to write. I went over and over and over those pages. Like something like because my technique to write ahead is to read back. So I'm gonna like I there are sections of that book where I was just stuck. Like I couldn't even see 1950 Gracetown. I couldn't even see what the inside of this reformatory would be like, where I'm just like, "Ugh, I don't know, where I would just reread and reread and reread what I had and tweak and tweak and tweak what I had done previously until I could get more forward momentum. So in some ways, I have replicated that as much as I can with the current manuscript, although I intentionally held back on rereading the Clark Gable chapters for the last stretch, probably since January, because I want to focus on the contemporary storyline. And yeah, I'm really, really grateful, honey, for your feedback, which was in agreement with my agent's feedback that I shouldn't be afraid of the historical chapters. My editor specifically said when he bought the book that he hoped I would focus more on the contemporary story than the historical story. I'm not sure why he said that. I probably should have asked him, but I think that that guidance was like a false note because in more recent conversations, he said that he thinks it's those old Hollywood chapters that are going to propel the success of of the book, right?
I
And
totally agree with you.
yeah,
You know,
like
it's
so what?
look, there is I could I don't really want to talk anymore about what I
Okay.
see and what you have done here because I don't want to hold you back. But one of these days, we're going to be on a stage in front of an audience, and I'm going to dig in and I'm going to talk about the different layers that
Mhm.
I see there. What I can tell you is that I've seen you consistently improving who it is you are as a storyteller. If it had been easier for you to write the reformatory, you wouldn't have had to process chunks of pain. The processing of those chunks of pain is, I would say, the obstacle becomes the offering. You were
Mhm.
helping the audience to process large chunks of pain within themselves, not necessarily having to do with race or culture, but
Right.
everyone's
Yeah.
got them. And what you did there by being willing to actually address the stuff that was real, not skating over the surface, to me, that meta narrative is one of the real gifts that artists give us. It isn't just the picture. You can have a photograph of a picture, but the painting itself is a different thing. It's almost like you can feel the energy that went into it. How do we access that? How do we be true to ourselves? How do you get up every day doing something with love when it hurts? How do
Mhm.
you do that? So let me ask you that question specifically. Every day when you were working on the reformatory, you were going into pain. Okay.
Mhm.
How did you do it?
It was just, the practice, frankly. Were there moments I was having fun writing there? I'm sure there were. I'm trying to think of some. You know what I enjoyed was I enjoyed some aspects of the research a great deal. I feel so much gratitude and respect for the people of previous generations who've had to overcome circumstances far worse than anything that we can deal with today. No matter how you think it's bad today, believe me, 1950, I mean, with some exceptions, more mass incarceration now, but you were in prison even if you were free if you were Black in 1950. So um, I really love learning about people who have persevered. And the same thing applied to my Hollywood research. I don't probably have to tell you that every biography I read was like a sad story. I mean, in terms of the potential, whether it's Lena Horne, Dorothy Dandridge, Hattie McDaniel, it's like, yeah, they bled through a little bit, but look, here's what they were up against. Here's the childhood they never had. Here's, Sammy Davis Jr. was never a child. He was a performer from the time he was a boy, like 4 or 5 years old. He didn't even know how to talk to other children. So there's like, and some of it's racial, some of it isn't. But I'm fascinated by learning, like peeking behind the curtain of history to see what other people have done. And that gives me strength. So maybe in learning about the strength of people like Harry T. Moore, the civil rights activist in Florida who was assassinated in 1951, shortly after the events in the reformatory. I mean, you're by yourself, man. You and your wife are out there activisting, and there was no civil rights movement happening then. That was just you. That's why they got blown up. That kind of courage is just like really inspirational. So, but it's also obviously tragic since, that they got blown up and dispiriting that they got blown up. So, what I'm trying to do, and the thing I do enjoy about writing all these stories, is to take all that pain, like you said, process it, sift out the things I don't need y'all to know. The readers didn't need to hear everything I learned about what happened at the Dozier School. It's not going to give you a better reading experience to know that. So I'm absorbing that, sifting it out for you so that I can create a story that is honest because there's ghosts, so people died, but hopeful. And I Bear Creek Lodge also ends as it's not really a spoiler because if you know me and my work, I write about intergenerational trauma a lot. And the point of that for me is finding a hopefulness, a hopeful peace, that we can work through these issues. If your father was abused and he abused you, that doesn't mean you have to abuse your children, right? And when people stand up and they say it ends here or it begins here, whatever the circumstances. So that's what that's the note I want to hit with everything I write. It
And
begins, yeah, we just went through hell. Every single one of us has been through or will go through our own personal horror movie. And we don't know what it will be. And that's one of the things I wrote in this book. And that my director realizes he's been writing these scripts his whole life to prepare for this moment, which is kind of what I've been doing. I've had some of my horror movies, but not all of them. And
there are, look, what you're talking about is the task of the storyteller.
mm,
It is the work to be done. And I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about how we're preparing ourselves for this movie, this
yes, please
little
do.
monster movie, where we get to ask ourselves how every image, every moment, every sound relates to the emotional impression we want people to have. What you just went through is talking about how this relates to a short story or a novel. We've discussed that, but also scripting is taking that storytelling and putting it into a very specific structure that is basically a blueprint for other artisans to come in and join with you. So when we
Mm,
teach screenwriting, which we're doing next Saturday on the 17th, we have to not only teach about story, not only teach about how to manage and connect with your real emotions and how to set guidelines, but then how to deal with that particular structure, and then how what is the difference between trying to sell something in Hollywood and selling it in New York for a novel or short story, whatever. That as we learn more about this, I see more basics that need to be conveyed so that people understand the playing field that they're actually on. If you guys are interested in that, then I desperately, hope that you will take this opportunity. It's the only screenwriting workshop that we're going to do in 2025. And you can go to writerwebinar.com, www.writerwebinar.com. And if you live in the Los Angeles area, you can even come and join us live in Upland, California. We have people that we have a beautiful space, and people are coming, from all over, and we have the opportunity to build that energy personally. It's great to do it over the internet. There is that intimacy that we can create, but if we can do it live, then the energy is like being in the presence, of tuning forks vibrating at the same frequency. It's different. All we can do is try to keep digging deeper. I walked out of Sinners, being honest with you, feeling a little depressed. I was feeling to myself, I couldn't have created that. I don't have the internal integration between my psychology and my culture. I did not have it when I was a child. No uncle taught me the blues.
Mm.
I had a mother who
Well put, Lovey.
was very conflicted about being so light skinned. She could have passed. She was like Mary, and she didn't, and she felt that it had crushed her life.
I'm sure it did crush her life. I mean,
And
let's be real.
so
Different
I
life.
couldn't have done what we saw there. But what I can do is to be inspired to try, to be
But you
inspired to
know
go
what,
as,
honey? I'm
yes, what,
sorry.
sweetheart? No, no, please.
The fact that your mother was Mary, I think that's a very interesting point. You are reflected in that movie as well.
Yeah,
We come from so many different experiences. You are what happens if Mary decides to leave her white husband and marry a black man, where the children have to hide in the car when they check in the hotel.
yes.
That's real. That's your
We
life.
got kicked out of a restaurant because the restaurateurs thought that my mother and father were interracial couple.
So that is, you claim this experience in your own way. I know you think I'm blackity black too, but I grew up in the suburbs, so there's some things I missed that
Yeah,
were
it's
considered.
only in comparison,
There
but
were no
it's all
mojo
part of the
dads
same
in my family.
experience. And here's the thing, that for every human being, their life is just 24 hours. You could be rich and so money is handled, but then it's about family drama and your health and you could be white and then it's about comparing yourself to other people of your group or dealing with your feelings of regret or guilt. You could be an immigrant, you could be a Native American, whatever you are, male, female, gay, straight, you expand until you hit the edges of your life. And beyond that, here there be dragons. If you if you can walk that edge and find the things that trigger fear in you and your cohort and your ancestors, and then you find ways to turn those into entertainment, that's life writing. That's what we're talking about, is finding the edge in your life, pulling back something that is real. You resolve it for yourself. I mean, you could do the Spike Lee thing and simply pose a question without offering an answer. I think that Ryan Coogler went beyond that. He was talking, when you take a look at the deal he made to get that movie done and own it in 25 years, and that line in the movie about how they were creating, quote unquote, a place for us. Okay, what is that? What does it mean? Everyone wants to feel like there's a place in the world where they fit. No one feels like they totally fit. Looking at that, that's the stuff. That's the stuff that you're going to be the best writer about. Larry Niven, my mentor, was in some ways a poor little rich boy. Grew up in a wealthy family. He did not have to do anything except, go into banking. Just instead of that, he wanted to find a cohort of people who would love him for who he is. So his stories were expressions of, this is my intellect, this is the way I see the universe, this is my sense of humor. And he found that group. And that thing, the tribe of people who are trying to deal with their lives, we recognize each other and we can help each other. And I think that the movie is such a success because he went through the pain. He was not asking you to carry the pain for him. He found the beauty that people used to survive the pain and then luxuriated in that beauty and gave it to us. I think that every time we look at a great work of art, we're looking at someone who has gone deeply into their pain or deeply into their love, or preferably both. And that is available to everyone. So if you have that spark inside you and you want to work in Hollywood, check us out, www.writerwebinar.com. Tell me, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to do before I kind of open the floor to people?
Um, Closing thoughts. Well, all I can say to people is our system works, It works for me. I guess nothing works for everybody, but it works for me. And I would just note that even if some of you are sitting there thinking, well, I'm not really interested in working for Hollywood, which believe me, I totally understand, especially after you read this book. But as I said in my newsletter, and this is the absolute truth, there are two things that are important about the screenwriting webinar. As someone who's taught in MFA programs in both prose and screenwriting, I was one of those people who was really pushing for and strongly believed that all writers should take a screenwriting class at least once. It has nothing to do with whether you want to work in Hollywood. It's about the things that screenwriting brings that help clarify the writing process in ways that prose programs do not teach, primarily story structure, plotting. And if you've ever taken a creative writing workshop, you know I'm not lying about that. It's almost like plotting is a dirty word, and writing visually, using visual symbols in a smarter way so that you can, I mean, it just creates more immersive writing when you train yourself to write more visually. And the second part of that is an extra. We have a life writing professional program we just launched. We've had a couple of great months with our Afrofuturism cohort, and we're going to meet again at the end of the month. But you get a free 2-month membership to our Life Writing Pro workshop, where you get to submit pages for review by trained readers, which is very different than your partner doing it, very different than your mom doing it or your children doing it. People who are also writers, who are also studying, and especially who are also studying the way we teach writing. Again, as someone who has taught in MFA programs, and workshops are a part of the core of MFA programs, it's the fastest way to grow. Having sets of eyes, trained eyes, it's the fastest way to grow as a writer.
Now,
And
I want to say
Steve and I
something
are of an
honest.
age where we want to do everything fast.
Yeah, I don't have as much time left to do things as once there was.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta
But
get
one of the
moving.
things that is also true is that we'll we're trying to figure out a way for the life writing professional program to be available to anybody without any financial barrier
Anyone who's
there.
taken
And
one of our courses.
anybody's taken one of our classes, because
Yes.
once you've done that, as far as I'm concerned, you're family, and we want to be helping you. But one of the consequences of that is, or one of the costs of that, hopefully, is that you understand that we have to engage with our lives and our career opportunities. So that we'll be taking a break from that in all likelihood during the month of June, and starting back up in July for everybody who's done the screenwriting class or those
And the
earlier classes.
Afrofuturism.
Because
Yes.
in June, we're going to be buckling down to, so we can face this challenge with making this film. This is an opportunity such as neither of us had hoped for or had planned for. But now that it's here, we want to bring 100% of who it is that we are, body, heart, and mind, to this. So, with your kind understanding, hopefully, come to the screenwriting workshop. Then you'll be coming to Life Writing Professional starting in July,
July.
and that will give you the time to do your writing so that we can actually evaluate it. This is this is something that we love so much, just being able to share this, but also share the fact that it is critical to take care of yourself emotionally and take care of yourself physically. The stress of staying on that edge is a very, very real thing. Thanks so much, Tenerife. And if you had to check out and start working, I
I'll
understand
stay here
completely.
until our cleaner gets here. So yeah, I'll be
Okay,
here.
that's fine. So the one thing that I wanted to talk about very briefly is the notion that it might be a good idea to work on developing one specific virtue every day. This is something that the Stoics talked about. And if you take a look at the three gates, it's like, we want to embrace, we want to escape suffering, embrace joy, be of service. We want to have healthy bodies, healthy emotions, healthy minds, careers, and art. I've separated art and career into two different things. I needed to take care of business, and I was not taking care of business. I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't watching it and managing it. So I have to make a shift there. And then to stay within the three gates. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? So if those are looked at as values, as virtues, honesty, kindness, and effectiveness, what would happen if you rotated between those every day? You woke up in the morning and said, this is an honesty day. I'm going to seek to be as honest as I can possibly be. Tomorrow, this is a kindness day. I'm going to emphasize kindness in my interaction with myself and with others. Or this is an efficiency day, an effectiveness day. What can I do to try to make sure every moment of this day is a step towards my goals? Eventually, you create a braid. These three things work together. It is my proposition that if you made a list of everyone who ever hurt you in your life, or everyone who you have felt is an ungood person, you would see very clearly where they violated the three gates. They were dishonest, or they were cruel, or they were just a mess and had no idea how to error check their theories of life. And so they would, do things without thinking about it and without learning from the results they've already gotten. I've met too many people who will defend their right to stay out of the gates. You can't be honest all the time. I believe you can, and you can be honest without being unkind. It's not a matter of using honesty as an excuse to be cruel. Pediatric oncologists have to give some of the hardest information it is conceivable to give. Your child is dying of cancer, and we cannot help them. But they train themselves to be able to do this compassionately. There's nothing you can communicate to someone where there is not a crueler and a kinder way of doing it. If you care, you seek to say it as kindly as possible. If you care, you look at how being honest makes you more effective and efficient. So you strive to be honest even when it hurts you. Kindness does not make you weak. And for me, if a mugger confronts me and I give them my wallet and they insist on trying to hurt me, then in my mind, they are out of balance with spirit, and that there is some part of their soul that is asking me to kick their ass. I mean, it's just asking me. It's like, it's the kind thing for me to do. Otherwise, they're learning to be dishonest. It's like, that's not good for anybody. Now, maybe that's a little self-justification, but I like it. The truth is that I actually had a man who was trying to push me into a fight, and he knew that I was hampered by the fact that I loved his family. And it was not until I stopped thinking about protecting his family and started thinking that it was my primary obligation to protect mine that I realized that kindness starts at home. And at that point, he could no longer manipulate me at all. I was clear on who it was that I was, and the fact that he was trying to hurt Nikki's daddy. That was unacceptable, period. And in terms of utility, it's like, can you think about utility all the time? Yeah, you can. And sometimes it's useful to chill out on the couch and watch cartoons. Rest and recreation have to be built into the cycle of growth. You're not accomplishing more to work all the time. You get so exhausted that you can't do anything effectively. It starts hurting. You can motivate yourself short term with pain. But the best motivation is love. Take a look, 7 years as opposed to 1 year. Take a look at that. And when you read that book, I guarantee you that the reformatory is not 7 times better. 100% guaranteed it is not. Learning how to be effective and efficient while speaking the truth and being kind to yourself and others is, to me, a primary necessity in life if you're going to move to that next level. And by focusing on just one of them, yesterday it was the truth. Today it is kindness. I'm just going to see what it feels like. This is something new that I'm trying, so I'm just kind of sharing it with you. All right. So that's the us talking to you portion of the evening, portion of the afternoon. Now I would love very, very much if you guys would raise your hands and talk about what's going on in your lives. Okay, Larry. Okay, unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's been a while. Uh, so back in February, my mother has been going through a lot of sickness over the last 3 years, and we finally got a diagnosis, and it's acute myeloid leukemia. And so she's been undergoing treatments, and there's a lot of stop and start because of immunity issues. Um, and I'm stuck in the house somewhat, or stuck to essential things a lot of times because which not being able to see Sinners in the theater is just one of the litany of things that's pissing me off right now.
Okay,
Um,
so because
but
you're in this position, Larry, because you are taking the honorable obligation of caring for your mother, correct?
correct.
Okay, so first of all, I would like you to take pleasure in that, to take pleasure in being an honorable man, that you're doing one of the things that is very difficult in life. So if you have chosen this and this is your path, then you have to go to the place that takes satisfaction, to know that the world would be a better place if we all felt such honorable obligations. Can you take satisfaction in that so that you're not, so you have something to balance against the suffering of you didn't get to go to the movies?
I think most of the time, yes.
Okay, good.
Most of the
Good, good,
time,
good.
I do that. Um, I've
Okay,
had
so,
any myriad of setbacks, I think, because I just have to get up off the mat, and that's what I'm doing. But a lot of
and
the
if I
things
recall
that I was,
correctly, one of your challenges had to do with work.
yeah, and it still is.
Okay, so what are you doing every day to resolve that challenge? Or have you found that the
I
stress is has been stopping you from taking actions?
I feel like for a minute it did. Um, there are certain things that I can't do as far as like the search is concerned, but I am trying to get my ducks in a row so that I can. I think I talked about this before. I don't know how many of you were here when I talked about going back into the field because I have a master's in psychology and was an intern at one point. So I'm putting my ducks in a row to get that in motion where I
Does
can get
when
that
you
in
say you're
motion.
putting your ducks in a row, does that include daily action?
Yeah. It,
Okay, so what daily action did you take yesterday?
looking for jobs on job boards, seeing what they want at this point, what they're
Okay,
asking for, so that when I apply for
okay,
these uh, jobs, when I have my intern number and the cost, which is mainly what I need to get sorted, when that's done,
okay. May I
then
suggest
I
to
know what
you,
they're looking for.
there's the kind of the yin and the
Because
yang
I've been
of
out
it.
of the game for a while.
Okay, so say that there's sort of the yin and the yang of it. The yin of it is educating yourself. The yang of it is taking action, asking for the job, actually applying for the job. That's the thing that when I mention it, you feel uncomfortable.
I don't have the intern number and things set up to apply for the job.
Okay,
There's
so
a
so
process
so
that
what
comes
the
before the
so what are you doing to get your intern number?
um finding out the tests and the cost of all those things for reinstatement because I have to take updated CE units
Okay,
to come
so
back
if
because
you
I've been out
so
of the game for over
how
a
long
decade.
have you been looking for that information?
Uh Probably about a month and a half, 2 months. That's about how and
So there is no single person who has that information for you, no single source of
it's
that information.
the Board of Behavioral Sciences tells me one thing and then they tell me another,
Okay.
basically.
So
So
then
it's
you have a situation
the
here where
bureaucracy.
you're having a hard time getting clarity on that. You
Mhm.
can't let that stop you. So you probably need to have a second thread where you've got more control, where you're doing something else to seek that employment. Because if you run into a wall there, the Stoics say that you cannot let yourself be stopped by the things that you cannot control. You've mentioned some things that you cannot control. There are an entire universe of things that you can control. It might be that you can't control getting a job in this particular field until you get these people to tell you what's necessary. That's going to be frustrating. But there will be other things that you could do to make money that you can control. It'll be a matter of I can put an hour, I can put 2 hours a day into this over here until I find the way that works. Gaining clarity on that and making a commitment. It's like that, one sentence a day thing. There's one thing a day you can do. You can send out one email a day, one letter a day, make one call a day. Have you been doing that?
Not consistently,
Okay,
uh,
good,
being
good.
honest.
So what stops you?
Uh, la- lately, um, hmm, just the stress and the physical nature of that stress. And I think I
Okay,
let my physical health get away from me, and I
okay.
paid for it,
So
if I'm
you,
being honest.
well, you need to be honest because if you're not honest, you don't know where you are on the map of your life. If you know that honesty says, I'm not taking care of my stress, therefore it is diminishing my capacity to respond, so I can't do these things. So we back up to what is it you can do in the first hour of the day that is handling your stress in a better way. There will be something you can do in the first hour of the day that helps you to manage your stress for the other 23 hours. What can you do that you have not been
Well,
doing?
what I was doing before was doing my breathing exercise in the morning and getting uh, my day chores done so that those things didn't pile up in the middle of the day and I'm
No, no,
running
no.
around like a
Your
chicken.
first hour is preparing your mind. It's not getting into your chores. Okay. It is about who you are, Larry. It is about getting Larry into the right position so that he can do these things and take care of his obligations. Separate, so meditating, doing your breathing, inputting positive feedback or positive affirmations, rewriting your goals morning and night so that you always understand what is it that you're trying to do, what is it that you're committed to doing, and then you take a look at the fact I didn't do it. Now you've got data. I didn't do it. Why didn't I do it? I was so stressed out that I let myself do these things over here. I had the time, but I didn't have was the focus. What do I need to do to sharpen myself? If you just chop, your axe gets dull. What we're talking about is how do you sharpen your axe? If it's critical that you cut that wood or you're gonna freeze in the winter, then you have to spend some time sharpening your axe. And that's that first 5 minutes of the day, the first half hour, the first hour of the day. When you don't do that, that's when you find yourself in a downward spiral. That the stress means you don't take care of things. Not taking care of things creates more stress. And
Yeah.
you start feeling like your life is out of control. So, what you have to do is to simply make the commitment to spend at least 5 minutes a day, because that 5 minutes a day is breaking that stress spiral. If you don't do the 5 minutes, now you've got a very clear view of the fact that whatever it is that is stopping you has nothing to do with your life. It has nothing to do with the outside world. It has to do with the way you are dealing with your life. Because when
Mm-hmm.
you talk about 5 minutes, you've got 5 minutes. Why don't you spend it taking care of yourself? That question is the kind of thing that journaling every day is great for. Why don't I take care of myself? What's going on? What are my beliefs about taking care of myself and how worthy I am? And do I love myself? Digging into that, because if you were to say any one of those things, I don't have time efficiency. I don't love myself enough. I'm programmed to give myself away to the world. Any of those things, if they're true, then they're kind to yourself. Let's just kind of experiment with, if today was about truth for you, then what is the truth about why you haven't been taking care of yourself?
Because I think there's a big part of me that feels like it's pointless.
Yes, thank
Gets
you.
into that despair.
Okay, so you need to work with that. You need to get to the point where you feel like you might die in this fight, but you're still going to fight. The part of you that understands that is your body, which is why I say, if you lose touch with your drive, all you have to do is try to hold your breath until you pass out, and you will meet the part of you that wants to live very quickly. It takes about 40 seconds. And the part of you that wants to live will say, God damn it, breathe. And that's the part that you have to build your action upon. The part of you that gets mad with the part of you that says there is no hope. The part of you that desires survival and is willing to fight right down to the last second. You have to find that. And sometimes you can find that by getting angry. And sometimes you can find that by falling back in love with the little boy inside you and recognize that you're his daddy. And if your mom is in an extreme situation, then you're experiencing tremendous amounts of grief and fear around that. So imagine what the little child inside you is experiencing. You're a grown-ass man. You can survive without your mom. He can't. So his dad had better be there. So whatever it is that you do, you have to find a way to motivate yourself to take the actions that the man who can use this situation, which is one of the core human experiences, watching our parents age and become frail and die, one of the core human experiences. This is the kind of thing where every day research, how do people get through this? How do people deal with grief and fear when they're feeling this way? YouTube is a fantastic resource. There are videos on everything you can imagine. If you could find someone who spoke to you there, who spoke of life and commitment and growth and releasing grief, or whatever it is that you need in order to be the person that you're committed to being, then your first 10 minutes of the day, while you're stretching, listen to one of them. Don't just trust your brain to do this. The software that you're running right now is telling you that you're not enough and that it is useless to fight. Okay? You need software that says, I will fight to the last breath. I love the world. I love my life. And I'm going to engage every single day that I have.
Pain and all.
Pain and all. Pain and all. I'm so glad that you came here today. So I will ask you specifically, what can we do for you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I,
So
I,
let's
I don't know.
let's start. Okay. Do you have your goals written down? What it is that you need to accomplish? And where you're going? The answer is not really.
Not really.
Okay. Okay. So you need to look at them morning and night and then do your breathing. If you will do those two things, just those two things, you'll start moving. The goals to let you know what you need to accomplish today, the breathing for your executive function, and dealing with the stress that you're under. Okay. So if you don't do those things, then you know that you're being controlled by old software.
Oh
Old
yeah.
and yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So if you might not be able to do this for yourself, but you might be able to find a partner, someone to exchange an email with every day to check in. Is there anyone who you can do that with?
Well, I'm doing some of these things with my therapist, so I
Good.
have homework.
Good,
And it's much like what we're talking about here.
good. So remember that you need to
So,
take action. Tananarive, I get the feeling you're hovering there. Is there something you wanted to jump in on this?
Oh, I'm not going to jump to the spotlight, but I just wanted to tell you, Larry, I have been through a long illness with my mother. We moved to Atlanta for a good couple years while my mother was ill. And caretaking is super tough. That's not in your imagination, but you can get through it and you will get through it. And what you're doing matters. And you will find ways to move through that haze and fog and come back to yourself after the initial shock of this diagnosis. We acclimate. That is our human power. There are things I have to do when I'm caretaking my dad now that would have destroyed me a few years ago, when we were doing road trips together and he was helping me research the reformatory. And now it's just Wednesday, and I'm grateful to have whatever time I can with him in whatever state he's in. And human beings know how to navigate this. We've been doing it since the beginning of humanity. So you've got this is my message. I think staring straight at the pain and the anxiety is important because you can't hide from it, but we do try. Don't try to hide from it. You can stare at it, and when you're staring at it, just remind yourself you can do it. You can do it because you are doing it. So
But you
there's
can't
that.
do it. You can't do it alone. And
no,
the software that you're running is it's keeping your brakes on. The beliefs that you have about this, that is not what you came out of the womb with. That's not factory installation. That's stuff you learned along the way.
and
So if you can commit to those two things, the breathing and reading your goals morning and night, then all you'd have to do is show back up here and let us know how you were doing with that, and we could get you right on track, by helping you clarify your goals, or why didn't you breathe? Did you set an alarm? So if you would set your alarm on your smartphone right now for 3 hours, if you got your smartphone there, set it basically every 3 hours, or basically even at the top of every hour, because you're roasting in stress. At the top of every hour, you do your 60 seconds of breathing. And that tiny little thing will get you going. We're talking about 5 minutes a day to be able to serve your mother and also serve yourself. Now, are you a writer, Larry?
sometimes, yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
you do understand that you are having one of those real life experiences that have triggered countless works of classic literature and art. That what you're going through is part of that universal human experience. If you made a commitment to writing one sentence a day on a story that is extracted from something you have learned about yourself or something you need to learn, you would not only be creating a pour to release stress, but you're also potentially helping others. It would also be creating, if it took Tananarive 7 years to write something because it was so deeply connected with the grief and the tragedy in her family, it indicates that pain used to motivate action can be one of our greatest allies. This is a real experience of life. And what you've learned is that you're pushing hard against a car with its brakes on. Okay, what do you need to do to take the brakes off? What would you need to believe about yourself, about life, about death, about love, in order to be able to have gratitude to be here and be the one who's taking care of this? Because if you can find some way to be grateful, so it's like, we've talked about finding mentors, M, taking action, A, find some way to be grateful. That you have the strength to do it, the opportunity to do it, find something to be grateful for, to have these moments with her, whatever it is. The I is the clear intention. That's your goals. Your goal is to escape suffering, and you're in suffering. Embrace joy and be of service. You're in service to your mom, and you're in suffering. So you need to escape suffering and find that place of joy. It's tough. You might want to take a look at, how did people who have done this in the past, how do they do it? And then find some way to put that into a story to write so that you can communicate what you have learned to others. I wish that you did not have this burden. I wish none of us had the burden of dealing with this aspect of life. But we do. So we must. Yeah. And if you will let us support you in this, we'll be here for you every week. But breathe so that you're dealing with the stress, so the stress does not become strain. And read your goals twice a day. The entire process can take less than 5 minutes. The only thing that can stop you is your own emotions.
Yeah.
Okay?
And, I have a lot of experience with grief and death. A lot. Like 3 people a year, usually. Since 2000.
That ain't going to slow down.
And
so,
no,
terrible.
It doesn't. But there's a difference between having experience with grief and actually dealing with it. And I feel like there's a part of me that just like made these experiences my entire personality in some way.
you've been stuffing your pain rather than using it to motivate you to live as fully. It's like memento mori. You could have used the deaths that have happened to inspire you to enjoy life more, to get more done, to love more, to stand and to dance in the rain and to get your work done in the time that you have. You could have. You made other decisions, but remember, you can always make new decisions. The memento mori idea, thou art mortal, as a means of increasing our joy of life, remembering death in order to feel that every morning that you wake up is a beautiful time. It's, oh my God, I got another day of life. As opposed to, oh God, another day. Ugh. Which one do you those are
I'm
two
laughing
completely
because I feel attacked. But, yeah.
See, but if you can laugh about it, now humor is the thing that makes it possible for us to cope with the abyss. That's what humor is for. And that's what love is for. And laughter is for. And action is for. The only reason you feel the negative emotions is that you're not using them to drive action. Use the negative emotions to drive action and you don't feel the negative. All you feel is the process of action. So I've said these things to you, and what I hope you will do is, first, join the life writing site. It's free.
No, I'm there. I just
You're
haven't
there.
I haven't posted in a long time.
Yeah, so post specifically, you need support in remembering to breathe and remembering to read your goals twice a day. If you do that, we can support you. And all you have to do then is support other people. Everything you learn here, you get to turn around and share with other people if you choose to. Put it into your work. Use it to expand you as a human being. It's the only choice that we have, really. And what your mother needs to know is that her son is okay.
Oh yeah, I know she's worried about that more than anything.
That's right. That's
more
right.
than her own life.
So you need to show her that you have used this to wake up and step up. This is it. If the death of your parents doesn't wake you up, nothing will. Okay?
Yep.
You can do this, Larry. We were made for this. It's the illusion that says that we can't. and that we're not. You can absolutely 100% do this, but you can't necessarily do it alone. Reach out, find role models, take action, and every day be grateful that you woke up. Okay? There are so many people who wish that they had, you know, they had the advantages that you have. If you can't, anything that you would miss if you lost it, be grateful that you have it. Start there, okay? Thank you very much for sharing, Larry.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, so next, somebody raise their hands. Yes, Carrie.
I wanted to know if Larry um, was connected to any kind of respite care services
I don't know.
um,
You need to ask that
for the.
on chat maybe.
Okay, I'll do that on chat. And I also wanted to know, did we get an email on the life writing how to connect to that? Um,
You go to www.liferight.com and
okay, I will do
yeah,
that. I will
and
do
just
that.
get in there. It's free. It will always be free.
Okay,
And all we ask is that you support each other and let yourself be supported so we can make the world a better place. I'm looking to help train leaders, people who
okay.
will walk and provide light, channel light to others.
I will go
And
into that because I've been journaling, but I've been using my journal mostly because, my dad just passed away in December and I'm still working on his estate in North Carolina and flying back here to Ventura to work my 312s and then flying back out there to try to get stuff done. And I've been using my journal mostly to write down uh what I need to pay for him again, how I need to get his plates updated because North Carolina, it says, that the title's in his name and he's dead and trying to get the title. Just I've been using it to kind of do like a list of to-do lists instead of using it as a journal. So I'm going to use the Life Writing Pro as
so the couple of
a
different things that
writing
immediately
space.
come to me. One is when you write down something needs to be done, the journaling part could be, how do I feel about that?
I do.
What do
I write down
yeah, okay,
that I'm
good.
like, I'm going through this bullshit again, or I
That's
walked
that's
into a place and
that's journaling. That's good.
and and it's funny because my dad was like a real smooth character around town. A lot of the ladies knew him. And when I walk into a new place and I can immediately tell a woman that he's been flirting with because when she sees, when she brings up his name and she sees that he's deceased, I see the jump back. And then, and then I'm given, condolences again. And then that brings me back. So I see sometimes I'm like running in circles. So I always go back and I write about that. I met another woman in town that Richard, put a little fangle dangle on that just found out that he passed away.
There is there are stories, novels, and screenplays to be found in a woman dealing with her father's estate and finding out how all the women in town felt about him.
yes, yes,
There really is. So it would allow you to contextualize. I mean, our specialty here is writers. Okay,
mhm.
just people who are willing to engage with their lives as warriors, but also writers specifically. So how could you take this and turn it and use it to elevate your writing? It's a
Um,
question.
I I am like like I don't know if I said that for the last time. Is I finally found a title for my memoirs, and it's helping to shape my memoirs because I've always started them and stopped them, but because I didn't know a good starting place, and so his death made that a starting place for me to start my
Now,
journal on that day.
it is a truth that unless you are famous or unless you are an extraordinary writer, your memoirs will simply be the common experience of mankind,
Yeah.
and it's not going to get published. But
Mhm.
taking the things, the events in your memoirs, and turning them into fiction, that can get
Yes.
published.
I've got a side by side for that too.
Great, great,
Yeah.
great, great.
I've got side by side with it, and I'm also trying to also work out because my main deal is what they call it fantastical fiction now, but I know it as sci-fi. So that's my
Novels.
niche. So I'm trying to
What is
work
your
that on.
dream? What is your dream? What do you want to publish? You want to get movie? What do you want?
I want to publish. I also want to get into screenwriting, and I want to be able to get into the movie business, which is why I
Well,
moved here.
okay. So, are you coming to our screenwriting event next weekend? Because you're in
I
Ventura, you
am.
could actually
I
come and
am.
and join us live.
I know, but I have to work that night. I
Okay,
just looked at my schedule,
fair enough.
and
Fair enough.
so I want to do it online.
Yes,
Because it's from 2 to 5.
that's right. It's 2 to 5.
Yeah, so I'm gonna
And
do it online because I have to be at work at 6:45. So I'm
okay,
gonna just come home from work and go to bed and wake up at 2 and do that. But I can't pay for it again until Friday when I get paid. So that was another thing because I
you
just
mean what, next Friday?
yeah, next Friday right before it. So I hope I
Okay.
can
Well, make
still
sure to
do that.
send us an email concerning your intent, so we save you a place.
Okay, all right, I'll definitely
Okay,
do
we will
that.
definitely save you a place.
Yeah, and so I'm definitely gonna do it online like I did the last one. Um,
Wonderful. Is there anything I can do for you today?
No, no,
Our
just really
email.
that Life Writing Pro thing was excellent. So I will patch into that. Um, you already helped me with the goals because my goals changed. Because when I first got here, it was like, okay, get a job, and get used to the job and get your schedule down, and then make space for writing. And then as soon as I got used to working nights and was getting on a schedule for writing, then my father died, and so I had to readjust the goals, and make space. And I'm also planning on hiking in Nepal in November. So I've got to keep on doing the walking, and the walking helps. And I also need to find a tool, a cheap tool, where I can talk into a recording as I'm writing. I don't know if I have an app on my cell phone that does that. So,
There are many such apps, and some of them will facilitate transcription. So,
okay.
in chat or over on the Life Writing site, make a request. If somebody suggest a really solid app, there are many
Okay.
different ways to do it. You can even talk directly into Google Docs. There are ways to
Oh,
talk directly into Google Docs.
okay.
Absolutely.
All
There are
right. Then I
lots of
definitely want
different
to do that.
ways you can do this. It's absolutely doable. Okay.
Okay.
So what's important is that you see how the goal that you have of writing books and movies is part of a goal to support yourself and share with the world, contribute, while doing something that you love. Doing the thing that you love every day contextualizes the job. I'm having a job, pays my bills. I'm grateful for a job that pays my bills and gives me
Yes.
time to write at least one sentence every day. See, you're
Yes.
on the path when you do that. And when you find the gratitude, it drops the stress, which then allows you to take your brakes off and take more action, for which you can feel more gratitude. So in that sense, joy becomes a self-reinforcing, self-energizing loop because you take adult responsibilities. I'm going to have my job and I'm going to do my work. The work is creating the safe place for your child to play. Okay, that's the writing. Okay, the work is the adult is going to go to work. If I have to go down into the coal mines, I'll do whatever it takes,
Oh
chop
yeah.
wood, carry water, take care of my family. The little girl who wants to write. Okay, so all of these things can be lined up so that you're constantly, every day, getting a little deeper into the who am I? I'm the person who every day does the things necessary to live the life, to have the feelings that I want. Every day I can do that. And every day you can do this. You can absolutely 100% do this. The magic formula is the only guaranteed success program. Why? Because our real goal is to be happy. That's our real goal, to be happy. And so if
Oh
every
yeah, definitely.
day you are focusing on gratitude, then you are starting the day already succeeding. Everything else is just extra. It's just bonus. That's what you want. It's like I had a conversation with a multimillionaire just a little while ago, and he was talking about possessions, and we were talking about philosophy and this, and I asked him, I said, if I stuck your head in a bucket of water, how long would it take for you to be willing to give everything material you have for your next breath? And he said, about 70 seconds.
Mhm.
Your next breath is free. In other words, the next breath of air, the next moment of life is worth more than all the material possessions that the wealthiest person in the world has. And they would trade all of that for what is given to you freely. When we can be grateful for what we have, no matter what the circumstances, it creates flexibility to see what other options there are to make it better. It's not being grateful for where you are, doesn't mean staying there. Doesn't mean staying there. It means I'm grateful for this moment of life. There is pain, but there is no suffering because I'm not going to wish that this moment was something different than it is. This moment is just what it is. I'm just who I am, and I'm enough. I'm enough right now, but I'm going to also become better. When you can hold both of those, now you're an adult self taking care of that little girl inside you. And she will love you and give you all that creativity. See that little smile on your face right there? See, I see the little girl that you were when you smile like that. When you let her, she's still there. All you have to do is protect her and make sure that she knows that she is safe and treasured. And dealing with your father's death is dealing with the realest thing you can possibly deal with because right now the little girl inside of you is hurting.
Yeah, more
She's
than I
hurting.
thought. More than I thought, because we weren't, that I'm more close to my mom's side of the family, my mom.
Yeah.
So I was taken aback about, um, you know, my emotions really took me about because I was so much about business. I showed up
See,
and
it,
took care of stuff and made sure he looked good in the casket and helped clip his hair and everything. I was very, very taken aback about how much grief I
see, all
have
you
and how
have
much
to
anger
do,
I have.
what you were taken aback by, the grief for the loss, the anger for what might have been, or the negative things that happened between the two of you, when you can create a metaphor that there was something about your father that you did not know. How many stories have been about children revisiting a parent and there is a box in the attic, a box in the basement, a legacy of some kind? You want some last conversation with him. If you had some last conversation with him, if you could conjure him, what would you ask him? Take that and create some metaphor. You find something in the house, a book, a journal, a possession, something that opens your relationship up in a different way. You have touched a bank of emotion that would make that story real, that would make that story powerful, such that a stranger who read that would understand both the love and the grief and the anger. And they would be able to then process their own grief and love and anger better because you showed them the way. In many ways, all we have as human beings is sharing our hopes and our dreams and our fear and our anger with each other. We carry our own cross, but we also say, and this is what this felt like, and this is what this felt like, and that is all there is of art. Okay?
Thank you.
You're very, very, very welcome. All right, remove that spotlight. Do we have anybody else? We have time for maybe one more person. Let's see. How about Daniel? He's calling in from Germany. Are you, Daniel? Are you there? Okay, Daniel is lurking. Leon.
I'm always willing to participate because I just love these Fridays.
I
Um,
love them too, sweetheart.
so I've been my health's been weird lately. I've had this constant nasal thing that's happening, very subtle. But anyways, I've been going to the doctor. I went and got a physical, just found out last night that everything's great except for my cholesterol. I have to give up red meat. I'm not excited about that because my son-in-law my son-in-law in Texas makes the best brisket I've ever had in my life. And we usually visit them in the summer on the way back in the fall.
So have it once. Say, I'm going to be really, really good, but I'm going to go to one barbecue a year.
Yes,
That's not going to kill you, kid.
that's not. Another weird thing that's happened is so I also got an allergy test on, environment, grass and all that stuff, and as well as food. Well, oddly enough, it came back that like 90% of everything I'm allergic to. So the doctor thought this is crazy, you know. So I have to go get labs. I was gonna go today, but had my vitamins and stuff this morning, so I messed that up. So I'll go Monday.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I've been thinking, I even though I have those problems, I just said, you know what, I can't just be stagnant. So I've been going to Pilates this morning. I had two classes back to back. And so I felt really good this morning. Feel really
That's
good today.
great.
And also when I do that, the ideas just, oh my God, I get so many ideas when it comes to writing.
Okay,
And
question. Real quick question. Do
yes.
you remember those ideas?
Oh, I write them down right away.
Okay, good.
As
Because
soon
you
as
can
I
write them
have
down, or you
I
could use a
write
micro
them down
recorder
right
or a
away.
recording app. Absolutely.
I started off
Absolutely.
that way. And you were mentioning earlier about writing down goals and reading them twice a day. And I know my goals, but I don't know that I had it all in one place. So I just put them all together.
Yeah,
Um,
look at it this way. Say you're taking a cross country trip. Do you not look at your map every morning? Do you not look
we
at your
do,
map every
we
night
do. I
to
have
be
my
sure
map
you're on
up.
track?
I have my map up right now
See,
because
so
I'm
what
planning the
happens is
hotels.
that if you look at your map morning and night, then you during the day you could just drive. Hey, let's stop and look at that plaster dinosaur. Let's the best custard in Mississippi is just 20 miles that way. It doesn't matter because you can enjoy the journey and be spontaneous with the journey because every morning and every night you're checking to be sure that you're closer to your goal. So it allows you within structure there is freedom. It is the people who do not structure generally end up not being particularly good at anything in life and complaining about where they are. But if you're willing to accept some structure, you get to play. I get to basically play most of my day because I'm willing to accept a lot of structure. Within that structure, I can do anything I want. But when I go too far outside the lines, it hurts a little bit. And then I go back because I'm not being who I'm committed to being. I'm not being Steve, and I like being Steve. Steve amuses the hell out of me. Yeah, Steve really tickles me. He really does. So, what I want for you is to do what it is that you're already doing. Is you've got these challenges, but you're not your challenges. Challenges exist in the space of your life. They're not your life. Okay. So basically just keep doing what you're doing. Breathe, look at your goals, and just check in. And anytime you need some reinforcement that we are here. I'm planning to do this the day that we're starting filming. I want to do this from the set, so that I can talk and I can share with you what's going on in my life because I feel like the more authentic I am about my challenges, the easier it is for you to believe Tananarive and I are giving you everything we can, and that we don't expect 100% of what we're saying to score to settle with you, but if 5% does, fantastic. Anyway, thank you, Leon.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. And that is our broadcast for today. And we will see you again next Friday. I would like everybody to unmute yourselves and say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye,
Everyone.
Have a
everyone.
great
Bye,
weekend.
everybody.
Everybody next
Take
week.
care.
Have
Have
a
a great
great weekend,
Fantastic.
weekend,
Hope everybody
everybody.
everybody.
has a good week.
Absolutely.
Happy
And the
Mother's Day
divinity
to all the
within me
mothers.
salutes and acknowledges the divinity within each and every one of you. Love yourselves, love each other, care about what is true and kind, but be sure you're being effective and efficient. Take care, people. Namaste.
Namaste.